We'd like to warn you that there's some graphic content ahead, which may not be suitable for all audiences. Hi, I'm Scott Margolin, and welcome back to Season 5 of Arc Week. Over the last several episodes, we've been covering two of the top causes of arc flash injury and fatality, which are people were issued arc-rated clothing and either weren't wearing it at all or weren't wearing it properly. Today, we're going to turn our attention to the top two causes of arc flash injury and fatality in the U.S. today, and what they have in common is people weren't wearing PPE at all. Why would someone do that despite the fact that PPE exists and standards have covered these issues for at least 24 years? These incidents fall into two basic categories. People who thought the circuit was de-energized, but obviously it wasn't if there was an arc flash, and people who knew the circuit was de-energized and chose to work energized anyway, despite the absence of a hot work permit and any PPE of any kind. As hard as it may be to believe, the number one cause of catastrophic arc flash injuries and fatalities in the United States is this second one. People who intentionally, knowingly chose to put hands in despite the circuit being energized. We're going to come back to that one. First, we're going to explore when people think the circuit's de-energized and it's not, why it is that that happens and what we can watch out for to make sure that it doesn't happen to you. And to do that, we're going to be joined by Jason Brosen, who's a master electrician and a CESCP arc flash survivor. Take it away, Jason.
Working on energized equipment when you thought it was de-energized is one of the leading causes of accidents in this industry. This is primarily caused by not following the 8 steps of the electrically safe work condition. After step 6, which is your lockout tagout, you're required to do number 7, which is a live dead live test. Simply, that means that you test a known live source, you test where you're working and make sure it's de-energized, and then you go back and test that live source again. Let's take a look at a few examples that I've personally seen out in the field. Number 1, let's look at lockout tagout. On Friday, you lock and tag something and you come back to work on Monday. Someone has energized it while you were off, and you come back to that and you don't recheck your work. The arc flash happens. 2, maybe you've got a disconnect and you've got line and load reversed, right? Which means the energized part is usually on the top, de-energized on the bottom, and they swap that around and you don't pay attention to that. The third thing I would bring up is the wrong location of something. Let's say you de-energize a motor control center and you've got multiple buckets and you think it's here, but it's really over here that you de-energized. You get into the wrong piece of equipment, and that's when that shock or arc flash happens.
Thanks, Jason. It's clearly very important to truly understand what constitutes de-energized work, both from a practical perspective and from the perspective of OSHA and NFPA 70E. Hammer time! Despite their size and fearsome appearance, hammerheads are actually very shy sharks. They don't usually come very close to a diver or a swimmer, and if they do, they almost never stick around for very long. They're so shy that it's actually far better to free dive them with snorkel gear than to go on scuba because of the noise and the bubbles. Okay, let's turn the page and get to the number one cause of catastrophic arc flash injury and fatality in the United States today. And that is, believe it or not, people choosing knowingly to work energized without an energized work permit and without any PPE. There are 4 very common attitudes that tend to lead to the vast majority of these incidents, so we're going to take them one at a time. The top of that list is, it's only low voltage, don't have to worry about it. One of the most common and dangerous myths in our business is that low voltage won't sustain an arc in air or can't arc at all. Let's be very clear here. 12208 is more than enough energy to arc, sustain an arc in air, burn your skin, ignite your clothing, and end your life.
I'm living proof that it can. My accident was 12208 and it nearly killed me. 1 week in a coma, 2 weeks in the ICU burn unit, 5 months of intense hand therapy, 7 months off work for a total of $1.2 million. Low voltage does not mean low danger.
Thanks, Jason. That's a lesson learned the hard way. Far too many of these incidents occur because the person knew the circuit was energized, but was in a hurry. So they chose to work anyway. It's late in the day and I want to get to dinner. It's late in the week and I want to get home for the weekend. Can't tell you how often that's what we hear. They choose to do the task anyway, knowing the risk because they're in a hurry, and ended up paying a very steep price.
My name's Brandon Smith, and I've been an electrician for 12 years, and I'm an arc flash survivor. The job that day that I was tasked with was going from a old transformer in like 30-something-year-old building to a new transformer they just put in. I was inside of a 200 amp disconnect on a vertical bus duct. I knew it was energized work, but the foreman told me it was a rush job. We had to get it done that day, 10 minutes before we leave on a Friday, and I was just trying to do my best.
I think for me, one of the biggest things is late in the day. When somebody gives you a task late in the day that you didn't plan on doing, you're thinking about going home. You're not thinking about, how going through all the procedural steps to do a task properly. When someone throws something on your plate last minute, you're like, all right, I want to hurry up, get this done so that I can go home. And that's exactly what I did. And I ended up paying the price.
Folks, please don't rush the job. No dinner or date or other plans is worth the price of standing in a fireball hotter than the surface of the sun. Next up is what I call normalization of deviance. It's when we do something that we know is wrong, get away with it, and then continue to do it. And over time, that thing that we know is not the right way to handle it becomes normal because we've done it over and over and over without consequence.
My task for the day was to install a breaker in a 2500 amp piece of gear. We should not have done that energized. There was no reason to do it energized. We could have come back at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, shut that gear down, did what we needed to do, and got out of there expeditiously. I still knew I needed to wear PPE doing that task, but I chose not to do it because I'd reached that level of complacency that a lot of master electricians do after 10, 20 years in the field. And they just thought, hey, I've done this a million times. It's pretty low risk since I'm smarter than this hazard. And it's not the case.
Please, don't play the odds. The risk is just not worth the gamble. The next common mistake is also an attitude issue, and it's when people say, I'm the guy who gets stuff done. I'm the guy who gets the job done. People are very proud of their professionalism and their work ethic, and they don't want to let down either the boss or the foreman or the customer. So despite the risk, they just man up and do it.
I was in a mindset to where I was an apprentice electrician, where I'm trying to prove myself. Foreman asked me to do something, I do it, and it all went downhill.
I did know that I was working on an energized system. I knew that I needed arc-rated clothing, and I'm thinking, do I call the general contractor back and tell him I'm sorry, I don't have the proper safety gear? That's not the guy I am. I'm the guy who's going to say, I'm going to get this done. So I went ahead and did the job, even though I had just a cotton shirt and pants on.
Just like an electrician can become complacent, so can a business, right? You don't have any accidents and you don't think, hey, I don't need this. And being complacent as I was, I had no PPE, no safety glasses, no earplugs, no gloves, metal tools, bare hand work, energized. Foolish decision, but I just decided to move forward.
So that's the leading cause of arc flash injury and fatality in the U.S. today. Choosing to work without a permit, energized, and without PPE. You may already have noticed that there's a commonality in the rationales for doing this. The 4 things that we have here. It's only low voltage, I'm in a hurry, I've done this 1,000 times, or I'm the guy that gets the job done. Think about that overarching attitude there. What is it? It's complacency. It's a confidence that we're a pro at our jobs, we know the risk, and we can handle it. After NFPA 70E added arc flash in 2000, injuries and fatalities began to plummet because people began to work safer and wear arc-rated clothing and other PPE. These rates dropped to about half of what they had been prior to 2000. So why aren't they at or near zero? They're not at or near zero today because of the 4 issues we've just covered. Choosing to work energized despite the risk, failure to properly and fully de-energize, task-based programs where workers fail to don the gear when it's appropriate, and improper wear of PPE. If you eliminate these 4 mistakes, you eliminate the vast majority of arc flash injuries and fatalities. Please stay tuned for our next episode.